Good morning, everybody. I'm so pleased to be here talking to you. I'm Dr. Madeline Taylor. I'm from the School of Design in the Faculty of Creative Industries, Education and Social Justice, and I'm talking to you about my research into grassroots circular economies. And I'm joining you today from unceded Turrbal and Yagara lands. So what I'm doing is sharing research my team and I have recently completed into the Grassroots community initiative Buy Nothing groups and what they offer for waste reduction and diversion, sustainability education and community wellbeing. And there's hundreds of these digital gift economies active all over Australia. And this digital gift economy offers a model and insights into how everyday citizens are participating in sustainable waste reduction practices. So in this talk today, I'm firstly going to introduce the idea of digital gift economies, explain how they work, and then what our research looked at. Looking at our findings, I want to first discuss what's diverted from waste using this circular economy model and how it ties to individual and community wellbeing, which both lead into the educational and behaviour change of such groups. And I'm really looking for advice and ideas on where to go next with this project and potential partners for action research. Hang on, I need to click. To start off, what are economies? These are when gifts or acts of service are the driver, not money. There's no expectation of reciprocation, and I want to stress that gift economies aren't new, but what is new is their move online into digital social networks. People use social media platforms to enable broader connections. We studied Buy Nothing Project, but this is just one example. There is Free Cycle or the Good Karma Network, which is very popular down south in Victoria, particularly in Melbourne. And Buy Nothing Project was started by two women in a small island community in the US in 2013. And over this last decade has grown into a network of over 7,500 localised Facebook groups with over 6 million members worldwide. And hundreds of these suburban-based kind of Facebook groups operate all over Australia, as you can see here. And you can see that the kind of distribution is kind of where you'd expect in terms of population centres, really heavily along the kind of eastern coast of Australia, but also has a really large proportion in Perth and spreading down to kind of smaller communities in the southern regions of the Bight as well. And each group ranges from a few hundred to a few thousand members, and I conservatively estimate about 1 million Australians are part of a Buy Nothing household. You know, if you're thinking about, generally it's women in these groups, so if the mother's involved, then there's 5 other people whose stuff is being bought nothing because of the kind of role they play in that household generally. And most membership comes from word of mouth and is restricted to local residents of a specific area. So you can see here, we've got, you know, Buy Nothing Wavell Heights, Buy Nothing Adelaide City. So it's really kind of localised into a particular suburb or collection of a few suburbs nearby. So in the groups, members ask and gift things that they no longer want or that they need. And the groups enable members to sidestep consumption of new products or to recirculate used items through their neighbourhood. So gifts allow people to gift things that they might not use anymore or that have kind of become surplus to requirements or that they received and don't actually need. There's generally some kind of rules around letting the gift simmer. So you'd post a picture and a little description, as you can see in the picture, of what the product is, and then you'd kind of say, you might, and sometimes the poster might describe some rules about it. So for example, pick up only, or, you know, would love this to go to a family with a dog, or, you know, something like that, depending on the kind of product that it is. Quite often, there's quite a few people who respond to a post, so they might then use a kind of reasoning around why they choose something. So it might be a kind of auto name generator, or a I know this person, or this person provided a really nice justification as to why they wanted it. And part of the thing is also not letting it go just kind of first in best dress. So letting it simmer, as they call it, to kind of allow for kind of a day or two for people to kind of respond. So it's not just kind of going to people who are constantly in the space. And generally people then, the person who's receiving the gift goes and collects it. It might be a collection from a person, or it might be I've left it behind the letterbox for you to pick up. So it may or may not kind of involve a like in-person interaction. And gifting often can work, gifts and asks can work for both services as well as products. So people might ask for help going something, removing something, kind of somebody asked for some help like taking up a pair of pants in my group recently, all of those sorts of things. And then there's also asks, where people ask for either their own self or for others, maybe someone in their community or someone in their household, for a similar thing. So this is an ask I had a little while ago about what I was looking for, and then a kind of photo for reference.
Can you check the chat if there
Oh, yep, sure thing. Okay, nothing very important. So that's the kind of general modus operandi for the gifts of for the kind of space. I joined my local group just because my neighbour at the school gate kind of told me about it. I thought it sounded really interesting, but and I used it to kind of gift on stuff that we were getting rid of. I had a small child and we were kind of outgrowing stuff. I also needed stuff for the small child. So I kind of started using to that. But what flipped it into potentially being a research project for me was this poll, you can kind of barely read, by my admins who asked the kind of group members what they were the motivations for the group. And the motivations, as you can see, were really varied. It was the free stuff, it was the community, it was the concerns about waste, it was about helping people, it was about being connected. And so I kind of felt this was really interesting. And in the commentary on this post, there was lots of people talking about how they felt more tied into their community because of being in this group, and how they were now giving away stuff in the group that they could have potentially sold on Gumtree or Facebook Marketplace. So bikes and things like that that have a kind of substantial market value. And I thought that was so interesting that people found more value in the group than they were starting to go against their own financial interests to be part of this community and be part of this activity. So we wanted to investigate what kinds of items and service circulated in the group, how the group participation influenced community and individual wellbeing, and did the participation change people's consumption and disposal habits. And we were very lucky to get some funding from the Centre for Waste Free World to do this research. And so my partner in the crime, Paige Street, and I investigated this. We used digital ethnography, so basically looking at two of our local groups, the groups that we were members of, to see what people shared, posted, liked, kind of asked for and took away, and then also interviewed members and admins from groups around Australia. And observing the groups kind of really gave us an understanding of community practices, and interviewing really kind of gave us an understanding of how these two kind of other kind of activities occurred, and how it kind of maybe changed their attitudes to what they accumulate and dispose of. We found that the initial and ongoing motivating factors for group membership were generally different and very kind of multiple. And while taking responsibility for the environmental impacts of consumption and the associated waste was a key driver, so too were the community connections and the joy of the free stuff, which kind of echoes what the original whole. Challenges emerged around the fit for purpose of the platform, the stigma around asking, and the complexity and time demands of group admin. And so I want to really kind of talk to that, those general findings now. So there was a crucial motivator of dealing with stuff. There's a kind of people talked about the amount of waste in the world, and that participating in buy nothing groups was seen to ease the burden or the guilt of having and using and living with stuff, as it's a kind of key and easy and free and local way to move products in and out of the home. People really liked that it was kept it local. And as you can see here, Buy Nothing also became a kind of an alternative to wish cycling, where you send things off to charity stores in the hope that they'll have a solution for these problems. And people talked about how they were kind of conscious of not overwhelming or burdening charity stores with their stuff. A lot of research also talks about how people like giving are more likely to kind of give, donation-wise, financially, whatever, however, if it stays in their local community. There's a kind of correlation between the tightness of the locality of your gift and kind of how much people give. And so you can see that kind of playing out in this space as well. There was some really interesting stuff around what people gave. So we kind of coded all of the objects we saw over the kind of 4 weeks we did data collection. So we kind of looked at posts every day for 4 weeks, one day a week, for 4 weeks into the 2 different groups in Brisbane, and kind of broke down the coding. And this heuristic just comes from the Gumtree kind of categorization that they do a report each year, so we could kind of see how this economy was comparing to like another second-hand economy that kind of has a similar community base and kind of location. And the stuff that was circulating here really closely aligns with what Gumtree is reporting in terms of their stuff. So even though it's kind of a free thing, it's still quite similar. So home decor, stuff for kids, kitchen stuff and clothing and accessories were mostly circulated. That's to say that most of the products being gifted and asked for are ordinary items of everyday use. Outliers, we saw some outliers, some funny things like chicken waistcoats to stop the chickens from being pecked, or fake avocados. So there's some kind of niche products and special forms of consumption. The vast majority is products that are everyday and ordinary. And but also participants mentioned their surprise at the kinds of products that are gifted and asked for, because you can gift anything. And so we kind of see a lot of really ordinary products are waste, such as used glass jars, cardboard boxes are really, really popular, coat hangers, or other things that you'd think absolutely no way would people want this, kind of a small piece of chicken wire, for example, gone like that. So there's kind of this really interesting thing about what kind of gets accepted. We also coded it by the kind of traditional kind of council mode of red bin, yellow bin, green bin. So, you'd be familiar with what that is, like grain waste and plant materials, yellow bin being the glass, cardboard and paper and hard plastics, and then red being general waste. And participants often talked about their bins as being a kind of point of intervention. So kind of thinking about, should I put this in the bin or should I put it on Buy Nothing, and kind of trying to post it into the Buy Nothing before they put it into their bin. One participant was really proud that they only had like 1 bag of red bin rubbish per week. And she kind of, others talked about kind of how they were thinking about moving things away even from recycling. So moving it up that waste hierarchy we're so familiar with. Participants also talked about how they were facilitating specialised recycling in their communities. So things that can't be disposed of in their ordinary household bins, such as textiles or specific hard plastics. So, for example, one participant collects bottle caps, the kind of ones you get from the milk, that are special plastic that can be recycled, but they have to be collected. So she has a little drop-off bin at the front of her house for that. Another person in my other study area was kind of collecting bread tags when they were still made of plastic. So things like that. So really kind of facilitating recycling and waste reduction for their community. We found lots of regifting of things. So things would go into the group, be used for a while, and then it passed back into the group to circulate again. And you can kind of see here, if this was our traditional inverted pyramid of the waste hierarchy. We're not pyramiding at all. We've got a really big bulge in that reuse section. And then a kind of smaller recycling thing and a smaller asking or reducing. And as everywhere, we need to move people's behaviour higher up that hierarchy. So there was a much more bigger percentage of gifting than asking, which kind of signals, you know, that kind of attempt to refuse and avoid new consumption altogether. One of the ways, this is just an example of a kind of repurposing post where people are prompted to kind of encourage, repurpose or cycle, which is how we kind of coded those posts there. One of the other things that was really interesting though in this kind of ask and reduce and avoid space is there's a lot of resource sharing and community ownership of infrequently used items. So for example, in Perth, there's photo libraries of tools that the community has kind of offered that they can kind of put out, you know, as a lending kind of library that lives effectively in each person's garage. Or in my local community, there's the party boxes, where people kind of have a box of plastic cups and plates and spoons and whatever, tablecloths, that then you can kind of loan out for kids' parties. So rather than everybody buying a disposable lot every weekend, the party box would travel around the community and kind of facilitate that. And I think really expanding these services like the shared libraries not only creates closer communities, but really offers a lot of pathways for waste diversion, which is important to this kind of really to be truly circular. When we talked to people about this asking thing, there was a lot of kind of stigma and challenges around that. Just like they're kind of whiz-bee about asking for kind of charity, you know, or support. People really felt uncomfortable asking for things, as you can kind of see here in this quote. We noticed that people would often, when they asked, would preface it with a just. So just asking, just checking, to really kind of minimise the pressure that people, and that kind of the shame around that. And this is kind of really tied to a neoliberal context in which our use of products is very individualistic. Most citizens feel uncomfortable depending on others. And kind of there's also this sense of like, if you ask for something and people offer it, there's a sense of an obligation to then take them up on it, even if it's not going to quite suit their purposes. So this was particularly the case for things like clothing and textiles, where a certain standard of hygiene or aesthetics is crucial to the use and is inevitably different for everybody. And so this discomfort and the naturalised sense of obligation implicit in these interactions, I thought is really a huge barrier in unlocking that circularity for these communities and in general. Oh my gosh, trying to work two computers, excuse me. One of the interesting things about this space is that group membership was tied to a Facebook profile, so it's a continuous experience. And this really changes the kind of behaviour dynamics and responsibility to the group norms. The ongoing membership in Buy Nothing groups results in repeated interactions, sometimes with the same people. For example, hand-me-downs might kind of, once you kind of know that that family has a kid that's 2 years younger than you, that you'll just keep on giving them your hand-me-down clothes down the street. Or, you know, because you kind of know that they have the party box, you'll see them each year in November when your kid's birthday is. So as a result, the practices of hyperlocal gifting has really shifted from a transactional experience, such as those facilitated by Marketplace or Gumtree, to much more relational and ongoing. And there's a lot of research that talks about how being generous is really excellent for community and individual sense of emotional well-being. This is kind of associated through feelings of altruism and social trust and the bonds it builds. And so this connection to community is a strong part of the Buy Nothing ethos. As the groups are restricted to people from local neighbourhoods, group membership forms a web of connections that connect people to their local community, even for participants who tend to lurk. And people who lurk still cited that kind of increased sense of belonging and well-being And this is not just tied to people's own activity, but from observing the individual practices of daily generosity, care and solidarity, happening by others as well. So you can see this here. And the ongoing social and community aspects are important motivators and benefits for the participants. Many participants decide to join their local Buy Nothing groups when moving to a new suburb, citing to getting to know each other and others as a way to feel like they're part of the community. And offline, many people know each other through schools, daycares, sporting groups, existing friendships, or kind of neighbourhood living next door. And at a time when people don't really talk to their neighbours, so seeing neighbours' names pop up on activity or meeting new neighbours through kind of collecting gifted items, you know, I'll go through my suburb now and I'll go, oh, that's where I got that yucca, that's where I got those corn cob holdery things. Kind of participants widen their community, and effectively this project becomes part of a network of relationships, which is beneficial for the maintenance of social wellbeing, but also really interesting because this positive and plus some kind of result in which community, wellbeing and sustainability are tied together links really kind of contrasts highly with much of the existing public discourse around sustainability, that things are going to be kind of being sustainable is going to make your life harder, right? It's going to make your life a little bit harder and a little less fun. And this kind of sense of solidarity is also crucial for the educational component, which I find one of the most interesting things of this, the behaviour change. So groups offer kind of both explicit and tacit kind of behavioural change in education. So kind of talking to members, they talked about how, as the kind of their ongoing membership changed how they thought about waste and consumption. She signed up originally because she, you know, liked the free stuff, but because this kind of ongoing exposure, it changed what her view was. Simply being part of the group can lead to these kind of change values, and through the kind of like this group norming effectively to instigate social change. And we hypothesise that the accessibility and membership on Facebook is a crucial aspect of this, because it's the embedded and comfortable ordinariness in the day-to-day lives of participants via their Facebook feeds, that is kind of a group's strength in enabling this widespread and long-lasting behaviour change. And changing people's attitudes to how they accumulate and dispose of goods, as we see here, and how they kind of how they can live more sustainably. It's part of this, you know, it's the exposure over time, kind of part of their Facebook feed, and it's people like them and they know, you know, people that they're part of this Facebook thing is you have your real name associated with that. And it's a community with a defined boundary. So it's people that you know and that you're very similar to, who live in your local neighbourhood, who are also doing these sustainable activities. And this kind of the sense of belonging that comes from that group activity as well. All of this ties together to kind of hopefully, well, we actually see kind of environmentally conscious behaviours kind of shifting towards those. Some people also saw the group as a really explicitly as an educative light, and particularly saw their role in the group as kind of taking responsibility for this education, as you can kind of see here in these quotes. Group admins tend to play an explicit role in this as educational role, whether that's kind of talking about the group norms and kind of what to post, or, you know, that you can post anything, or particularly local issues such as, you know, down in Victoria, there's millions of councils, all the councils have different kinds of bins. So, you know, what colour bins goes for what kind of products. And people mention learning from others in their community at repurposing options, or using the groups to ask rather than to gift, just to reduce their consumption. And, you know, you can see here that the kind of this repurposing stuff also becomes the point of education as well. The buy nothing we found also presents a way for kind of complex, diverse and sustainable practice to operate in a really ordinary and accessible and convenient way. In a late capitalist society, which is notoriously complex and increasingly difficult to respond to, we argue that the everydayness of the group is their most radical feature. One of the central aspects we found for the success of the group is how it connects to the consumers every day through its hyperlocal digital mediation via the Facebook platform. So people's engagement is prompted by their feed, you know, so kind of it pops up, so they're prompted to engage. And you know, they might have a quick scroll through daily through Facebook, and which habit not only connects them to the group, but also prompts them to ask or gift products. Although people commented that they now just use Facebook primarily because of the buy nothing kind of group. It's not really very hard to do in terms of it's kind of easy to use. So you take a photo, you write a post, you put it on your porch, and the thing just disappears. So it's kind of fairly easy and not much out of the routine, and the pick up and drop off is very local. Now, the other part of the challenge of this platform is that obviously not everybody's on Facebook. You know, it's kind of particularly tied to a particular demographic, and it's not really fit for purpose. You know, it's hard to find and track items because it is a kind of a chronological thing rather than a categorized thing that we kind of see in like a Marketplace or Gumtree. But this is important, I think, because it keeps it in this kind of relationship or discursive space rather than a transactional space. So there's three challenges, I think, for the movement or the group that I kind of can see in the future. First off is the overarching international movement has fallen prey to appification. So as we know, everything's trying to become an app. They've tried to become an app as well. And it's not working because it isn't part of people's everyday routine. It becomes yet another thing on your phone that you don't open, and you're not prompted to engage. It's very buggy as well, but that's the kind of the different thing is that it's not sitting in that discursive space anymore. It's kind of got that categorization, and so it isn't about the kind of ongoing communication. In the kind of communities we talked to, a lot of people didn't even know about the app, but those who did kind of resisted because of feeling that they were losing that community feeling, as well as the ease of use and the kind of part of the habit of being kind of another thing to remember. And kind of part of this, I think, is recognising that circular economy systems need to be accessible and easily incorporated into people's daily habits, ideally through leveraging existing patterns of behaviour, as we can see kind of through the Facebook. With the move to the app, the international kind of organisation has also vacuumed out a lot of the support they used to offer to the Facebook group leaders. So in terms of, they had training modules online, they had kind of resources for about kind of how to handle situations, kind of a community practice network of kind of other admins, and it all has kind of gone missing, and the admins are now kind of scrambling to fill those voids themselves, but which is kind of really adding to the complexity and time demands of group admin. Which is contributing to admin burnout. My admins have actually just passed the baton on to others, which is, you know, luckily there's enough investment in the groups that people are passing the baton on, but I'm concerned about this kind of as an ongoing issue. There's also participation barriers. So there's participation barriers on the growth and use kind of users and groups. So knowing about the group so people can participate, I think there's could be a lot more work to done to prove knowledge of the groups and promote them, and also kind of work out how to grow more groups across different communities, because effectively any community where you've got more than kind of, I don't know, 500 people in a collection, you can probably, like, you can have enough activity to warrant having these groups. But as with the, you know, kind of extraction of the support, this how to set up new groups has kind of been now been lost as well. It's not just happening in big cities, like Esperance in WA has a very active group with a town of 12,000. So we know that these groups can activate in kind of smaller country and regional areas as well. But the research that Buy Nothing Project has done originally suggested that no group should be larger than 1,000 people, because after that it starts to become more transactional and less community orientated, and the kind of investment in the belonging shifts. But to split groups is a lot of work, and the admins we talked about how they could, it was easy to let it grow, but it was to kind of actually work out how to split it was more emotional labour and time than they had capacity to. But it's really important because of that behaviour and belief norming. And then there's also shifting kind of the growth and use of individuals already in the group. So encouraging individual members to participate more frequently and higher up the waste hierarchy, particularly around their asks, shifting their asks. And we kind of thought there was, there's lots of ways that you could potentially facilitate the asking, changing patterns of behaviour to encourage asking, particularly around, group norming of just making it more common for people to ask by behaviour modelling and those sorts of things. And also lean into the opportunities offered by the group for community libraries, encouraging and sharing kind of communal objects such as tools or sports equipment, games, party equipment, camping or other outdoor equipment, or the things that kind of are used fairly infrequently but are kind of high value, can kind of connect these communities more. And finally, there's the kind of issue of imagination. I love this quote by Gibson Graham, which talks about how people kind of have no trouble accepting these economies exist, but find it harder to believe they have real or potential consequence. The extraordinary shift in how we need to live to kind of address this climate emergency is currently kind of really hampered by inertia inherent in the familiar. And while the impact and success of the Buy Nothing community comes from its familiarity in the platform and in the operations, we suggest there's a bigger leap of imagination and belief in the value and consequence of this group. And the group membership is required for its potential to be truly reached. And I want to kind of encourage you to think about what would the world look like if every household was part of a group like this and it became the norm to ask your neighbours before hitting the shops. I think that would be extraordinary. So to conclude, overall this research has shone a light on hidden economies that are making progress to circularity, with group membership providing waste reduction and recirculation potential, environmental and individual wellbeing for individuals and broader society. And it's one route to embed circular economy practices into people's everyday lives. There's two areas of findings that most excite us. The first is exploring how group norming and behaviour change intersect in the platform affordances and group dynamics and shift values around sustainable consumption and disposal. Understanding these can help us identify what are the crucial factors that can be leveraged and implemented elsewhere. And the second is the plus-sum approach to sustainability and how this is connected to community wellbeing, via the positive effects of altruism and generosity. Establishing an alternate public discourse on sustainable consumption and disposal is really interesting and an exciting possibility here. I want to also recognise that there's many different motivations driving circular economy behaviours, and the joy of free stuff is a fine one. Like recognising that people kind of might like free stuff, and if they're not getting it from the shops, that's all good. So kind of not just discounting the kind of moral value of like the sustainable practices as the kind of primary thing. If they're doing the work, who's to care how they get there? The other is kind of using these kind of things for behaviour change, as I talked about. There's a report by this hyperlink if you want to find out more, and I'm looking for ideas about where to take this, kind of larger projects, and kind of what partnerships I should be looking to develop as we take this research further. So thank you so much for coming.